From the virtual newsroom of Impact Alpha, this is your Impact Briefing for Friday, August 14th. I'm Monique Aiken. Today, Impact Alpha's David Bank joins me to recap yesterday's call on systemic investing. Hi, David.
Hey, Monique.
And we'll hear from Maurice Jones, CEO of Local Initiative Support Corporation, this week's Agent of Impact. But first, here's what you need to know from this week in Impact Investing. Impact Alpha took a look at Energy Impact Partners, the strategic equity firm that has rounded up a few dozen corporations to invest together in low-carbon technologies. Microsoft invested $50 million in the collaboration. High-tech greenhouses are raising capital. App Harvest is building a 2.8 million square foot greenhouse in Moorhead, Kentucky, to bring sustainable food and jobs to Appalachia. It raised another $28 million. And Bayer and Temasek staked $30 million on Unfold, a venture to develop seed varieties for so-called vertical farming. The pandemic has vastly expanded the home food delivery market. One winner, Temper Pack, which closed $30 million for its eco packaging. Green bonds are getting bigger. Visa floated $500 million for green buildings, renewable energy, water, and wastewater initiatives. And Google's $5.75 billion corporate green bond is the largest issuance so far. Yesterday, David and I hosted Impact Alpha subscriber-only Agents of Impact call on
systemic investing.
We wanted to bring together the discussions around systemic risk in the financial system and systemic racism.
One thing that came through to me is how important it is to know how the current system came to be. Here's Dimitri Duckett of Living Cities.
But I think it's really scary for people to often embrace learning history because we've come to believe what we believe based on what we've been taught our entire lives. And so then when we must now go back and reconsider the things we weren't taught, are we actually abandoning our trust of those who taught us? And so I feel like it's a very human experience to actually embrace history with additional lens and additional knowledge.
And Sarah Hoyt shared Cambridge Associates' work with their clients.
The initial conversations with the majority of our clients starts with, I want to learn more about racial inequality and how that's impacted in my portfolio, and what do I own, and how can I invest in diverse managers? That's a huge part of our work, is opening our aperture in our universe to really finding those opportunities that have been overlooked by the mainstream market.
The question as always is, what can you actually do? The call had some practical examples, but John Lukamnik suggested one freebie.
Have any of you ever written to the trustees of your mutual funds and said you care about these issues? I'll tell you, I sit on a mutual fund board. I've sat on one for 14 years now. You know how many letters like that I've gotten? 0.
Here's Dimitri Duckett again.
When we think about our future and risk-adjusted returns, we have to remember it's not just a financial calculation. It's a societal construct. And when we want to see better outcomes for society that include whatever capital really means, we have to bring in all of these other layers.
Impact Alpha will post the full replay of the call next week. Now it's time for this week's Agent of Impact. Maurice Jones of Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LISC, is one of the earliest and biggest community development financial institutions, or CDFIs. LISC is looking beyond banks to mobilize capital.
When I looked around, my view was, well, wait a minute, there are some other sectors who should also be anchor tenants for our work. Healthcare, because of our alignment around doing social determinants of health work. Technology, because they were really, in particular, looking at what they could do to make housing more affordable, both for their employees and for the areas that they were impacting. The sports world was awakening to the issues of race and discrimination and relative lack of opportunity in some places. And so
CDFIs are having a moment in the COVID crisis, and LISC has been highly active and has rallied corporations from Lowe's to Verizon to Walmart to support community lending.
Corporate America has really stepped into this moment of, you got a conspiracy of three forces, right? You got a COVID, a pandemic, you've got a recession, and you've got a racial reckoning going on. And yeah, I would have to tell you that we have seen corporate America step up with us like never before, and they are continuing to do it. So it's not over. Yeah, corporate America has really answered the call this summer. I just want to. My prayer is that they answer the call next summer, and the summer after that, and the summer after that, because that's what you're going to need. I like to tell people, just as the U.S. saw an interest in having a healthy and rebounding Europe after World War II, it is in our interest for our toughest census tracts from an economic perspective to also bounce back. And just as we needed a Marshall Plan for Europe, we need a Marshall Plan for the under and disinvested places in the country. And that will take years.
Yeah.
But there's no question in my mind that if the commitment is there, the transformation will occur.
You can see Maurice and all of our Agents of Impact on Instagram at Impact Alpha. That's going to do it for your Impact Briefing this week. You can read all of these stories at impactalpha.com. Subscribers receive the brief and full access to Impact Alpha, including subscriber-only Agent of Impact calls. Go to impactalpha.com/subscribe and use code BRIEFING100 for $100 off. Thank you for listening, and thanks to David Bank for joining me today, and our producer, Isaac Silk. I'm Monique Aiken, VP of Programs at Mission Investors Exchange. Make sure you check back next week for the latest Impact Investing news.